Hey, g'day everybody, and welcome to the driver's seat with Greg Murphy. That's me. In this podcast, we hit the road with fascinating Kiwis to talk life, personal journeys, and a little bit of lane changing. But before we take off, a quick thanks to our sponsor, Neuroscience, providers of fleet and driver safety solutions to make our roads safer. Have a check out of their website. It's autosense.co.nz. Right, today I am buckled in with a guy who knows more about your brain than you do. Neuroscience educator and parenting expert, Nathan Wallis.
My son gave me a card for Father's Day when he must have been 13. And it said, thanks very much, Dad, for being the best, most loving, wonderful father in the world. 75% of the time.
What? Who puts 75% of the time on the card? Could you not have just left it at wonderful, best father in the world?
Now, you've maybe seen him on stage or on TV, heard him or seen him in the media, or maybe even quoted him at home during a parenting panic attack. But right now, he's in the driver's seat with me. Woomfka!
Oomfa! Buckle up!
So, tell me about the red Mustang.
Yeah, well,
What
I
brought
love
this
it.
on?
Probably my inner child.
There you go.
I remember when I was a kid, I really, really wanted a convertible. Before I could even say the word convertible.
So just convertible.
I
It could have
used to
been.
say,
It
yeah.
could have been like a Nissan Micra
Yeah.
convertible, but
Does
does it have a name? Do you call it something? Has it got a affectionate sort of like it's a real live thing?
Yeah, I thought about that because it was a bit predictable, Sally, Mustang Sally.
Of course.
Yeah, because you can't avoid that one.
Yeah.
But no, really, in all honesty, I just call her baby most of the time.
Fair enough.
Come on, baby.
Sounds fantastic, this thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's like it's bloody got an aftermarket exhaust on.
Yeah, it's beautiful. People love the sound of it. It's
That's
what I'm
cool.
known for now, pulling up at people's houses.
Is it?
Oh, Nathan's
It's not
here.
Nathan the neuroscientist, it's Nathan the bloody loud exhaust Mustang driver.
Yeah.
Hey, so who taught you to drive?
My older brother. I got my learners and then just drove on that for years and years and years. But I had to.
How old were you?
Oh, like 29.
You were on a learners?
Yeah, until then.
Oh my God, Nathan, you're one of those people.
Yeah, I just never got around to it,
I don't know if I should be surprised by this or not. Do you like driving? To have a car like this, you've sort of, you've got to have a little bit of that.
I do like driving, but now that I've got older, and I used to drive from Christchurch to Milton, where I come from, all the time. It's a 6-hour drive, 5.5 hour drive. Now I can't drive more than an hour and a half without, getting cramped legs. It's just old people stuff. So I like driving open roads and stuff, but no, I don't really like driving in Auckland. I've never got used to it.
Who does like driving?
Just dribbling along and
I mean, driving in this kind of environment is not driving.
no.
It's just manipulating a vehicle to actually get from A to B. It's not actually driving.
Yeah.
Which is, anyway. The open road it's nice living in the country and being able to actually take the time, if you're in Christchurch or something, and drive to Te Anau or something like, or drive to Queensland, Wanaka or whatever, and the roads are,
The roads are good, music's playing.
That's right.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Also, I got this 5 years ago too, when I was still young looking 5 years ago. So I looked like the young guy with a cool car. Now I'm just the old guy having a midlife crisis. So it's not as cool anymore.
So then maybe you do need to put like a bumper sticker on it. I've owned this before.
Yeah. Before I got old.
Before my midlife crisis, I owned this
Before
car.
the grey, I had this car. If I combined the Mustang with a Ute, what would I have? A Cybertruck.
No, you fucking...
I knew you'd say that. It's cool, Greg. It looks like a spaceship.
You're being sarcastic, right?
No, I like cars that look like spaceships. That's pretty much why I chose this one. It looks the most like a spaceship that I can get.
It's not cool. It is not cool. That is the epitome of sheep following another sheep. So how do you rate your own driving?
I've never been like a boy racer driver that's tried to be rah 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 and full skids and stuff. And I don't get any of that road rage thing. I think the opposite to that. I'll be nice to people. Someone accidentally cut me off because he's a fucking dick.
Yeah, that's okay.
Rather than to scream and hit my head and go, oh, you fucking dick. I just think, oh, that could be me on a bad day. Oh, whoops, I've just made a mistake. You just want someone to go, oh, it's all right, mate, I saw you.
It would be good if everyone was like that.
Yeah, just be nice.
Yeah.
I got a foster brother that's fully into road rage. It's pretty stressful being in the car with him.
Is it everything?
Everything's, you know, like, man, you're going to have an ulcer by the time you're 50.
Like that guy pulling out in front of you like that. That'd be great.
It's nice little lad.
Whatever. It's okay.
All good.
Yeah. I would
might be in a
have
hurry.
gone mental.
Yeah. Trailer though.
Do you feel stressed that I'm in the passenger seat with you?
If I didn't really know you, I would feel not as relaxed. But I know you. You're a mate, so I can relax. If I do something really bad, I'll just go, right, cut that out, Greg. Just edit it out.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone know.
Yeah, which of course I wouldn't do.
Yeah, I know, but...
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Right, let's go and get serious. No, not really.
Enjoy a little drive.
Yeah, I did. Wasn't as nerve-wracking as it could have been.
That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put any pressure on you.
No, you didn't. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. And we've worked together now. Geez, is it 3 years we've got?
Yep, must be at least 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing a few road shows and the Eyes Up New Zealand campaigns and
I've learned a lot.
I've learned a lot. We've both learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, we're quite different, eh? But
very.
You know, our knowledge bases are different. I mean, not that different to people, but our knowledge bases are very different.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good synchronicity.
Crossover.
We could get on well, but didn't really know anything about the other person's topic. So
absolutely
find the other person interesting.
I'm definitely still not an expert, but I do reference you quite often when I am talking about specifically more so around the driving thing and everything for our Street Smart program and bits and pieces.
Yep.
So yeah, doing our stuff. Teenagers in the Brain have been really, really good, and trying to influence some learnings and teachings to parents around their kids learning to drive.
Yep.
All that stuff's been great. What? Just tell us about the stuff that you do on your normal everyday that got us to actually get you involved in training the brain or talking about driving in the brain.
Yeah, I suppose in general I just work around neuroscience, like around how the brain works. I used to be the lead neuroscience trainer for Brainwave. They're the national body in New Zealand that disseminates neuroscience, and I was a lecturer at Canterbury University, so in human development. So I just have a job where I'm immersed in staying up to date with that research and applying it to practice. It's hard when people ask exactly what I do for a job because it's not a normal job. So I don't just do one thing. I mean, I'm often delivering keynotes at conferences. I train so many different people because different, the brain's relevant to so many different careers. So I get to work right across the board with lots of different people. But it's mainly around just putting, how the brain works, the new understandings we've had since the 1990s, the decade of the brain, and giving people empowerment through self-knowledge about how that stuff works and how you can...
Put some context to it all,
And to be proactive about it too. You can, you aren't a result of the biology of your brain. It's more that the biology of your brain is a result of who you are. So you can be much more proactive in it. I think when you understand how the brain works, you can take charge of it instead of just reacting to your life. You're being proactive.
So why did that all happen though? Well, like what was the instigator? I mean, you were at teachers college. You went to learn to be, train to be a teacher.
Yeah. I quickly worked out it was the naughty kids I really liked the most. Like I sort of went into teachers college just because I liked hanging around kids.
Because you're from Milton.
Yeah. And because I just, I was always the family babysitter and stuff. I liked kids. So I was a bit lazy really. So it was like, let's just do a job and it's going to be fun. And it'll always be fun working with kids. And it was fun being a primary school teacher, but a lot of work as well. And the really meaningful stuff you did with the naughty kids that you knew was life-changing is not what they measure and their outputs and stuff. And it's like, I'm here for the kids, but I'm not really here for the curriculum so much. I don't care as much about them learning to read and write as I do about them being happy and confident. And because I come from a pretty rough background, so I want everyone to know no matter what sort of background they come from, they can make it. They can be cool and they can be good and they're not damaged and, just when I clearly got on with the naughty kids. Like the other naughty kids recognised me. You recognise your own tribe. So it was easier for me. Like, they'd be, how do you get those kids to behave? I didn't have to do anything really. They just did. We spoke the same language and stuff. So the principal put all of those kids in my class and I had a wonderful year. But it made me realise I might as well go back to uni.
So what are we talking? How old were you? What year was this?
Like I was in my very first year of teaching.
First year?
Yep. So I had a first year of teaching, supervised, and then it was the next year.
Yep.
Got all the naughty kids. So I did that. And then I went back to university and did a master's degree in Dawson counselling, to specialise specifically in being a child counsellor. And then from there, I started to learn about the brain. You don't really learn about the brain at Teachers College, but when you start to study trauma, you start to look at the impact of trauma on the developing brain. So I'd introduced brain scans. And that just fascinated me, like it was like the social science, because a lot of counsellor stuff can be quite warm and fluffy. It's not very measurable and it's not very, analytical. It's more, qualitative. It's about, love yourself and these sort of abstract things. Whereas brain scans could give you a clear understanding of, bam, I see this. People that are traumatised generally don't engage their frontal cortex. You've got 4 brains. Brain number 4 is the frontal cortex. It does all the good stuff that makes you mature and mitigate risk and be successful and self-control. But underneath is the emotional brain. The average teenager is pretty much in their emotional brain. They don't have a lot of cortex going on because adolescence that cortex is shut for renovations. The average 2-year-old, they can sort of talk, so they've got some access to the cortex, but essentially the 2-year-old and the 15-year-old are kind of the same. They're living in the emotional brain, and there's not a lot of frontal cortex going on. And as traumatised people are basically the same. They're just in that emotional brain all the time. So I just found it much easier, and for myself, to manage my own self, understanding that objectively. We call it metacognition, when you sort of stand outside yourself and look at how you're thinking. And I think neuroscience really gave us heaps of that, and I found it really helpful. And it gave a real clear pathway for how, if people have come from trauma, because the more I work in trauma, the more I think, God, everybody comes from trauma,
in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. It's all very comparative trauma. You can't tell, that. Like as a counsellor, you might be dealing with a kid that's been abused and neglected and beaten and tortured. And he comes in and he's reasonably happy. And then the next kid, he's had a wonderful, cruisy life, but his parents just got divorced. And so that seems comparatively little, but he's more traumatised than the kid who's been, you can't compare, because trauma is a very subjective thing. And it depends on so much that goes on, and timing and context and stuff. So, I just think a lot of people don't realise the potential for the human brain to heal. A lot of people think of themselves as damaged. A lot of people think of themselves as not clever enough and stuff. And if you think that, then it becomes true. So I think teaching people about the brain, and actually you're much more a master of that.
Why these things happen, why they evolve, give context again to timelines and pathways, right? That
all brains are good brains. And so, if you've been through some trauma, you've grown up in domestic violence and stuff, and so you've learned to be reactive, that was a good thing for your brain to do at that time. It's just recognising
you've just been through a really bad situation.
And in that situation, that was the right way to respond. It might not be, now you might be responding in that way in ways that aren't healthy, but it's realising it's not that your brain's bad or wrecked or anything. Your brain is brilliant. It was doing the thing that it was supposed to do. You've just now consciously got to go, oh, okay, now I don't need that same response. I need a different response. And you have to, you often have to practice that response about 90 times before it segues in, but it gives people, that ability to change and not be stuck with the brain that they've got, but to be more in charge of it.
Shouldn't this be part of a curriculum for teenagers?
Yeah. You think it would be a part of, that's one of the frustrating things about being immersed in the research. I lectured at the university for 15 years, and you assume when you go in that we are doing everything that the research says. And you assume that we're a research-driven society, but we're not. We're a culturally driven society. It was amazing to me to be exposed to the research and to see, the stuff that contradicts our society. Like, people put so much emphasis on what high school your kid goes to and getting good academic grades at high school. And, but we can predict your kid's outcomes from secondary school with a really high degree of accuracy at the age of 3. So sent into a flash private secondary school and spending thousands of dollars when they're 11, it's not really going to change those academic outcomes. The brain's not designed during adolescence to work out how intelligent it needs to be. Anyone that lives with an adolescent will know the brain's largely shut for renovations during adolescence. That's not when it's going to, that's mainly about the first 3 years. When I went in, I thought play. There must be half the literature must say get those kids learning nice and early so they get good habits, and the other half must sort of say play. And you get in there and you realise, no, all of it says play. There is no advantage to individual instruction under the age of 7. All the stress pressure that we put 5 and 6 year olds under just results in high rates of anxiety and depression. And whether a kid learns to read at 4 or whether they learn to read at 7 after the age of 8, you can't tell for the rest of their life. So why are we pushing 3-year-olds to get literacy and numeracy? Why are we telling early childhood teachers to interrupt the play and bring the kid over and get them ready to write their name and stuff? It's just a cultural perception that the earlier you learn to do things, the cleverer you'll be.
And then it just becomes a belief,
a
widespread belief.
And people don't question it. They just think, of course the 4-year-old that can read's got to be an advantage to the 7-year-old that, that doesn't learn to read till they're 7.
But it's a competition too for parents, right?
Yeah.
Oh, little Jimmy, he can write his own name at 3.5 or whatever.
They tend to think human development's a race, but not right across the board. No one's trying to get their 2-week-old baby to walk. Everybody knows that, it
doesn't happen.
No, if both parents are gymnasts, gold medal winning gymnasts, you can't get your baby to walk at 2 weeks. You will damage all their muscles standing a baby up earlier before they're, But it's kind of the same for everything else. We tend to damage 4-year-olds when we get them to do literacy and numeracy. We damage their creativity. Creativity is the basis of problem solving, which is the basis of intelligence. So the kid that, Scandinavian countries don't formally introduce literacy until they're 7, and yet by 8 they've got higher literacy rates than we've got. But again, we follow the culture, which says, well, the earlier you learn to do things, the better off you'll be. If you've got bad literacy rates for 16-year-olds, let's get in there at 4 and start teaching it early.
Yeah.
But if you're doing what's essentially a 7-year-old behaviour at 4, you're failing to meet the needs of a 4-year-old because they're mainly around creativity and innovation. But, that's just one example. But what I'm saying is you're naive to think that we just follow what's best for the research because we don't. Our system tends to be much more culturally informed about what people think. And there doesn't tend to be a lot of faith put in teachers that have actually been doing that craft for 25, 30 years. Yep. They're told to put aside all that knowledge and just do what the latest politician has decided is based on his cultural understanding of how learning is, how we're going to do it.
Funny that. What learning is. Well, we haven't learned really anything, have we?
Yeah.
No. Far out. We can go into a big rabbit hole with all that.
Yeah,
bloody
that's
interesting.
Right.
Very interesting. But I suppose we should get back on a little bit more topic. That was a really great explanation, though, of neuroscience and what you do. And must be so rewarding, though. You must, but frustrating at the same time that you're not able to get more of this into more places, into more heads and more, more widespread. Yeah. It's got to be a bit frustrating, I would have thought.
It is more rewarding than frustrating, though. It is frustrating as well, but it's a really rewarding job I've got.
You're a dad of 3 and have also fostered kids.
Yep.
How many of them have got their driver's licenses?
All of them.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I think the youngest one's still doing a dad trick and maybe is on her learners.
Yes, Mr. Nathan Wallis on his learner's license at 29. Okay. Yeah. Did you teach them to drive? Partially, or
no,
they teach themselves?
I wasn't that good at teaching them to drive. I remember my youngest daughter. I took the last driving lesson I took her on, and I didn't react. I was completely positive the whole way. And she said at the end of it, because I had grandchildren by then, she said at the end of the driving lesson, "What the hell happened there? There was no clenched knuckles, there was no breathing." And she says, "It's normally so uncomfortable trying to drive with you because you're on edge the whole time. What was different?" I was like, I grandparented you. I just, you work out as a grandparent that it's about how you make them feel and things. So it's just, so I didn't want to stress you out and stuff. She's like, "Oh, great, you wait until I'm 18 to finally learn how to parent properly." So we had one successful driving lesson with her where I grandparented her, but the rest of the time I was too stressed out. So no, they chose to go with uncles and aunties and stuff who are much more patient.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much sort of what's happened with me, to be fair, with at least my boys, because I was pretty hard on them. Well, with that in mind then, I think you've sort of half answered it, but how much of what you teach today was learned from your own parenting? And how's your own
Very
parenting evolved, I suppose, the way where you do deliver and the way you think and your learning as well.
Yeah. I was that kid that knew everything about parenting when I was 15.
Oh, right.
One of those ones that, when I have kids, it's going to be like this, And so, I always loved the family babysitter and stuff.
But you were from, again, I'll say it, you were from Milton.
Yeah. But I always really loved kids. I always really looked forward to being a dad. So it wasn't something I just sort of cruised into casually. Then I also come from a pretty once a warriors background as well. So you're also unpacking the stuff that you don't want. And but I've had a really rewarding experience with my kids' parenting. The youngest is 26, and I've got good close relationships with all of my children. You can't, when you become a grandparent, you do reflect on how much better it is being a grandparent. So you can't help but look and go, I worked out being a grandparent, I didn't need anger at all in parenting. I didn't realise I didn't need it at all. I thought I had to have something to back up what I was saying with. So I was a nice parent most of the time, and we communicated and we negotiated and stuff, but sometimes it was like, right, just do as you're told. I thought that was a dad thing, and I needed some anger in the background, and I didn't want to use anger very often, but it was what I used to back things up eventually. And then you work out with grandkids, you can't get angry with your grandchildren. You're not around them enough, and they've never seen me angry, so they'd be devastated if I got angry. And you work out other ways of doing it, and it turns out that it only takes you about 20 seconds to work out another way of doing it, and how much better the results are and how much higher quality the relationship is, that I realised, I really didn't need any of the anger, and it really just brought down. And I wasn't excessively angry, I'm just self-critical, but, I did have moments where I was really angry. And my kids, because we've got a good relationship and they're articulate and they're open and they talk about that. I remember my youngest daughter saying, she said, I really appreciated you, that you're that sort of dad that read bedtime stories and sung songs going to bed and, cuddled and was affirming and gave affection and all that sort of stuff. And she said, I really liked that. I remember my son saying when he was at primary school, there's only 3 other kids in my class that have dads. I was like, 3 other kids? And I thought, that can't be right. I would know if everyone in the class was a solo parent. And I started going through my head and I went, no, there's not. There's more than that. It turns out what he meant was there was only 3 other kids that had dads that were fully like mums, that were fully available, that you could ring your dad, he could come pick you up. The other ones just had men that lived in the house that, turned up at night time. And So I had that really close relationship. So they will tell me, and I remember my youngest daughter saying, so when I'm a parent, Dad, I'm going to be exactly like you, except less angry. I thought that's very clear, really. Yeah, that's how I would have wanted to. That's how I am as a grandparent. I'm just like I was as a parent, but less angry.
So if you went back into it again, you would hope that you took your grandparent.
I would.
Yeah.
I'd go back and realise that anger is not serving me. It's just taking a lower. I don't need it at all. It's a story I've got in my head that I need it. I don't. I can find another way. It's just taking a lower. It's just lowering the quality. But I also just think, I'm all right with good enough. I don't have to have been perfect, Actually, my son gave me a card for Father's Day when he must have been 13 that said, and he made it himself, which I was impressed with, and it said, thanks very much, Dad, for being the best, most loving, wonderful father in the world, 75% of the time. What? Who puts 75% of the time under? Could you not have just left it at wonderful, best father in the world? And he's like, well, realistically, 75% is being generous. A lot of the time you just get up and you're just in neutral and stuff. But so when I realised I was going to get downgraded, I just accepted but I was like B+, that is, 75% of the time. Yeah. But I think it's actually a good description. I was a B+ father and I'm happy about that. That's pretty good.
Well, now you've reflected on that rather than actually caught up in the moment of just seeing the 75%. Forgot the rest of it.
Made me laugh. It's so him. Trust him to give me a grade.
Yeah. He's got a sense of humour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's good. You said once war warriors background, upbringing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to, can you give us a little bit more?
Oh, well, just not everyone comes from I want to say Little House on the Prairie, but that would just show my age. But, not everyone comes from this perfect background. So a lot of people come from, when I say once were warriors, that's, parents are piss heads and your kids are left alone and there's that sort of, the domestic violence and the beatings and all that sort of stuff. It's a fairly common experience in New Zealand. But I think because of that, I got lots of messages about how damaged I was, that I had ADHD and obsessive compulsive disorder, and everyone just telling me I was wrong and broken all the time. And so, and I don't think I was wrong. I wasn't broken. That you can come from that sort of background and your brain responds in the way it needs to when you're in a violent situation. So, the kid that learns to tell the kid that can look an adult in the eye and tell them to piss off, that seems like a misbehaviour. If you live in a house with a paedophile, that's a behaviour that saves you. The kids that think they just got to do as adults tell them to do and be polite and be good, that's a really weak behaviour to have in an abusive environment. The kid who's got the ability to look an adult in the eye and tell them to fuck off is actually much safer. So every behaviour that they tell you is wrong or naughty is actually in the behaviour that you developed, that in the context you developed that behaviour, it was the right behaviour. So I think I'm passionate about that. There's so many people come from that sort of background. I want them to know that they're not damaged, that they're not broken, that they're not who they're supposed to be, that they're not unfixable. All brains are good brains. All brains are amazing. I think regardless of what your background is, everyone's got the ability to heal, and you're meant to be who you're meant to be. Not everyone's supposed to be all lovely and middle and down the road. And the world needs variety. We need lots of different type of people. So
when did you realise, though, like you weren't wrong?
That's hard to say, because I think I remember some of it's temperament. I had a nana that wasn't really a nana. She was just the old lady on the corner, but she adopted me like a nana, and she treated me like a king. So I think from her I got an innate sense that I was amazing. You know, I've always been loved as well. I had that once a warrior's upbringing, but I also had other people in my life that loved me. So, because I've been asked that question a lot, why didn't it get through? I think oftentimes I just had an innate sense, basically, that there's nothing wrong with me. It's all you fellas that are fucked in the head. I'm fine. You know, and I think that temperament type, someone said that's the ngāpuhi in you. That was being smart. But, yeah, I have had a good self-esteem as well.
So what age do you, I mean, can you
really early on.
By the time you were adolescent, you
oh, well before that.
Yeah, you had moved on from at that point. From
when I was 3, like I got a very detailed memory of my early childhood, so I'm not like a normal kid. I remember from really early on. I remember most things, and I knew from 3 that I was much different than other people. I knew that I was much more intelligent than everybody else in my family. You know. It's hard to talk about that stuff without sounding really big-headed and stuff, but I spoke really early. It was clear that I was different than all the other kids. Mum said, I already had a girl and I already had a boy. You were number 3, so I knew you weren't normal.
And it wasn't because of school.
And I was, in the first 2 years, I was like this perfect baby that was just, didn't cry. And Mum said I was born like an adult. I just looked like an adult, and I learned to talk really early, so I was articulate by 9 months. And so I accepted really early on that I was different than the people around me. And I think because I'd already been in foster care by 3, I've been living with my nana, you get a perspective on, you know, because you can compare that metacognition. You know, if you're only in one family, you just think that's how everyone thinks. When you go from one family to another family, you realise, oh, there's different ways of doing that. So you get this metacognition standing outside it. So it's not to say that I didn't then get affected by stuff when I was growing up and have a bad, low self-esteem and start to think there was something wrong with me and go through that journey and stuff. But it was always there. There was an innate sense of loving myself right from the start. I think that really helped. That a lot of kids don't always have. Because a lot of the messages around me, some of it was defensive. Because it was, you know, because I had ADHD and because I was a bastard. That's a word I grew up with lots because my mother didn't know who my father was, and so they weren't married and things. It's hard to marry someone you don't know who they are. So I just always had these messages that I was wrong. And so I think as a defensive strategy, I developed this. No, I'm not. Like, you know, it's you that's got something wrong, you know. Yes, I don't know really. This was my way of trying to answer it, but it's a complex thing, childhood, but yeah.
Massively.
I think I was lucky that I just had people around me as well. Like we talk about risk and resilience, that if you grow up with just risk, then you get all the bad outcomes. But if you grow up with nothing going wrong, you often don't grow up to be very strong and very resilient either because you're just used to the thing.
You don't have to deal with anything that's challenging.
Yeah, that's right. The ideal is actually to have challenges, but to have people there that supported you. And I did have that. I had a very challenging childhood, but I also had a nana that really loved me. I had an auntie that really loved me. So I knew what it was like to be adored as well. So I think that's what allowed me to help be resilient. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep. I'm very open about all that stuff and to share about that stuff because I think I want to be like
you're not unique in that space as in having to deal with challenging environment and a rough upbringing and you know.
Yeah, and the only bad thing to come from that is when you believe that you are damaged.
Yep.
And everyone's telling you you're damaged with all these disorders and stuff. I mean, I remember thinking with ADHD early on, so I can do 10 times as much as you, and so that's a disorder. Yeah. How was that a disorder? Shouldn't you be taking a pill and trying to catch up with what I'm doing? Like, you know, so I didn't believe that.
Because you're different.
Yeah, because you're so told all these negative things, and they're only true if you believe them. I've got so many people, mates and stuff I know now, that have a belief that they're not intelligent. They might have just had dyslexia or something. They're fully intelligent, but the school gave them an experience that told them they weren't intelligent, so they believe that. So now the way they approach things is from that base belief, and so it becomes self-perpetuating. I remember being with 2 other mates and all 3 of us had to read these instructions. We just took them separately and way to read them. See, we do sometimes read instructions. But the other 2 had a bad experience at school. They started reading it and thought, oh, I'm too thick to understand this. And so put it away and were a bit shameful about the fact they couldn't understand it. Whereas I read it, and because I expect to understand it, I don't have that. I don't think I'm not intelligent. I then worked out, this doesn't make any bloody sense. Oh, this must have been written was written in a different language, and they've just translated it. That's why it's not making sense. So I looked for why it didn't make sense, whereas they went straight to, I'm not clever enough to understand it.
Yeah.
And I know really they're as clever as I am, but those belief traits start to be self-perpetuating. You start to think you're dumb, and you start to act dumb. You start to think you're intelligent, you start to act intelligent. So it's about, just getting people to know that they're fine. they're
support
great.
no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, you and I have been out on the road for a while doing these amazing presentations. You know, as I say, we as you said, we've both sort of learned a lot from our different backgrounds and what we brought to those. But for people who haven't seen one of our sessions, our Driving in the Brain or our Eyes Up NZ sessions, how would you explain the connection between brain science and driving, which you have done because that's what we do?
Yeah. I suppose it's again that metacognition. It's just understanding what your brain does. I mean, I suppose I go to the stuff that, like when you take your eyes off the road, and you look at something like have a quick look at the text or the, got to change the radio station or something, and when I look back on the road, how much longer it takes before your brain actually
connects.
There's an illusion that you're seeing the road in front of you after like a second, but actually it takes much, much longer. That's what your brain's seeing as a prediction, not what's actually there, that it takes much longer.
Yeah, I love that description you make about the prediction and the video camera.
Oh, yeah, yep.
You know, not seeing the nose.
Yeah.
It's there.
Everyone thinks we've got a video camera in our head, whereas brain science tells us that you don't. You have a story maker. In fact, we even put percentages on it. Only 7% of what you're seeing in front of you is light hitting the pixels in your eyes, giving information, which is what people think is that video camera. So 93% of what you're seeing is your brain predicting what it's going to see and not actually what it's seeing.
I mean, that stuff just blows my mind.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it also means that it's quite easy to change your brain, and that if you change the way that you speak, like if you're depressed, a lot of that's to do with the language that you use when you're depressed, and you start to, conjure up depressing images. Whereas if you know 93% is based on prediction, you start to predict positive things happening, then, you can change your life and change your brain a whole lot easier than people think, because it is just an illusion, really. 93% of it's prediction. Yeah.
And something that made a lot more sense from discussing and talking about the things that you brought to the table with our Driving in the Brain sessions was some of that science around, again, obviously predicting.
Yeah.
But when we turn up at an intersection, for example, and we look both ways, it's what we look for what we're most used to seeing. So we're most used to seeing a car.
Yeah.
So if there's a motorbike,
that's a good example.
We'll often not see it, and then we'll pull out, cause a crash or near miss or whatever, and go, I never even saw that motorbike.
Yeah.
Or I didn't even see that cyclist who was coming towards me.
Yeah.
Because our brain wasn't actually looking for it, because it's predicting and it's looking for what it sees.
I've had exactly that experience with motorbikes and bikes that I've had to, since working with you. I now, I look harder because I've had that experience where I looked and I said absolutely nothing, and I pulled out and just missed a bike. And that bike was there, and I didn't see it because I wasn't predicting. I thought I was looking, but I'm not looking consciously enough. I'm looking and seeing what I predict to see.
Yeah, and that's again not taking the time to actually focus.
Yeah.
And actually see what's actually there. Yeah, which I found was really interesting. I mean, it's clear, the brain and driving. There's so many things going on that need to work properly. Well, what's the one thing that about the teenage brain behind the wheel that surprises most people?
How much it's affected by having another teenager in the car. The biology of your brain. Like they think it's rather an arbitrary rule that the teenager's not allowed to have another teenager in the car.
For a restricted life.
But actually, like during adolescence, the unique biological changes that are going on, what I tell parents is that limbic, emotional brain, trumps cortex during adolescence. So if you're my teenage son and you're in the car with me and you're 16, I'm in my cortex as an adult, you're a teenager in your limbic system, but because you getting to consume with dad, you move into your cortex, and that's the part you need for driving. Understands consequences, regulates behaviour. What I'm saying is, as soon as there is another teenager in the car, teenage trumps, limbic system trumps cortex during adolescence. Doesn't matter who the other teenager is, even if it's a sister that they can't stand. As soon as there is another teenage brain in the car, then my 16-year-old son's brain will move down to the limbic system. So they're going to be a way worse driver when there is another teenager in the car. So there is real hard science behind why we say for those first few years to not drive, you only have a licensed driver in the car with you, because then the teenager themselves stays in the cortex and they get used to driving in their cortex. And those early forming habits that you have, you can tell teenagers, I think, that have driven with other teenagers in the car because they're quite bad drivers.
But the problem is we've got reference to it because we were them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And they don't, teenagers won't listen to us, but also this isn't part of the learning or the process of getting a driver's license. None of this information is being provided, or it's being, learnt or understood.
No.
And even those that control the regulations around it, they don't know it or care to include it or put enough reference to it and how important it is.
Yeah, and when people understand that, they get their buy-in a whole lot more. Because a lot of parents, I've seen them change that, where they're like, oh, no, he can take his, his 13-year-old sister to sport. It's not going to matter, surely. When they actually see the science of that and realise that there's like 10 times more chance that your kid's going to have an accident now. Now you've got both your kids in the car. They often pull back from that then. Actually, is there another way to get her to the sport then? If they know the reason why, they'll often follow it a whole lot better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it from personal experience right now about the amount of, I've got kids that are... parents are just like, they're not even fazed by the fact that their kids are driving with other kids in the car, either their own siblings or friends, while in that state where they're supposed to be, really focused and not have any distraction in that space. And the risk is just astronomical.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but people are willing to take the risk.
Well, risk taking is a funny thing in itself, isn't it? I think that, because I'm just amazed by how many people, text and look at cell phones and stuff while they drive, and just I don't even want to do that. I can feel it being distracted, but they have this 100% success rate thing. They've 100% of the time they've not had a car accident from checking their cell phone quickly. So they're now convinced that they can text and do the cell phone. But it's a real false economy, that 100% thing, because it's not.
And the scary part about that is there will be people that will do it for their entire lives, right?
Yeah.
And they will get away with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Invincible. But there's way too many examples of someone that's done it twice.
Yep.
And the third time they've had a car crash because of it.
You only have to be affected by that. I've had only just one person in my extended family like that, a young person that's just driven off the road and died. I've got 2 people I know that have been young and just been texting and not taking the turn, or one drove off a cliff, and both of them got killed just by that instant decision of just trying to, checking a cell phone. So they would have had 100% success rate before too, but it doesn't matter when the time comes, So it's a bad habit to get into.
But I mean, there's again, it's what you're also seeing, what kids see their parents doing as well is a big part of why they'll do that as well, right?
Absolutely.
They'll just follow.
Yeah.
So what's actually going on in their heads? How can we get through to them around that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think, there's so many things we want to teach them as teenagers, and this is the age where they don't want to listen to us anymore. So you have to
as you said before, and we've discussed, adolescence, basically the frontal cortex is shutting down for 3 years.
Yep.
And then what do? We give you the chance to go and drive a car.
Yeah. Exactly.
Timing
we wait
couldn't
until
be
the very
worse.
part of the brain that's, really needed for driving. We wait until that's shut for renovations and then give you a license. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I think it is. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a lecturer, but it does come down to modelling. I say to people, you've got the first 1,000 days to build your kid's brain. You've got until 11 to influence their character and their values and their traits. And then after that, you've just got to live with them, really. So you don't want to try and teach all these lessons in adolescence. I think by adolescence, it is about role modelling. It is about me not being tempted to have a quick look at who that message is from, because then I'm doing that, I'm modelling the very thing I've told them not to do. So I'll be very, very clear about getting in the car and putting the cell phone in the glove box, which is further away, and just modelling that. Stopping the car to check the cell phone, to check what the message is. If I want to check the message, actually pull over and stop the car. And I think them seeing that is more powerful than anything else you can tell them.
Yeah.
They do, end up copying just your habits.
I hope a lot of people listen to this. We need to obviously push this in the right direction here.
It can be quite challenging to change your own habits. Like I didn't think, before we started that project, I didn't think I checked my cell phone anyway. Yeah. Because I'm just not a person that I don't naturally multitask very well.
But also, you're not someone that had to every time it beeped or whatever.
That's right. I don't. So I didn't think I did anyway, but then being conscious of the fact that we're now on a nationwide campaign saying not to do it. So anytime I looked at my cell phone, I was like, I'm guilty. I realised how often I had to stop myself. I wouldn't try and text when I was driving, but I'd often have a look to see who the text was from. And so it was like even just breaking habits like that, because the kids will see that. They'll see that you are still having a quick look to see who the text is from. It's easy enough to change. You just have to be conscious of it. The kids are in the car. I'll say, can you have a look and see who that text is from? And they can open it up for you.
Yep. Yeah, it's very good advice. So we, through with our good friends at Neuroscience, we ran a poll didn't we? Was last year, or the year before? Was it last year? Beginning of last year or the year before? Asking parents what worries them most about their teenage drivers, which we use in our presentation.
Yep.
And the biggest one, which wasn't really a surprise, was, well, no, it was a surprise and wasn't a surprise because there was a few other things that were in there.
Yep.
But was using a mobile phone was the biggest one. And then came peer pressure speeding. And lastly, because we thought it was actually going to be higher up the list, was drugs or alcohol, drink driving and alcohol.
Which is probably, that reflects that we're Generation X.
There you go. Does.
Generation X really were the worst generation, like when the parents of our age, and we've got teenage kids, and we're going, oh, these bloody teenagers nowadays are all, and we complain about them. It's funny when you look at the research because Generation Y are really responsible decision makers, and Z Gen, whatever you call them, our kids. They do drink, drive way less. They smoke way less cigarettes. They wag school less. They delay when they break their virginity. On just about every measure, they're far better behaved than we were, because we've been measuring for hundreds of years how old you are when you first have sex, smoke drugs, have alcohol, all of that. It's always been measured. And so we know by far Generation X is by far the worst generation ever. They did on every rule of bad behaviour. Our generation, we smoked the most drugs, we drank the most piss, we drunk drove the most, on every measure, we were the worst. And so now we are parenting. And so it's just funny when I hear Generation X go, oh, these generation nowadays, it's like, they're way better behaved than you were, mate. So when you're Generation X, I'm saying to your teenager...
Completely forgetting what we used to do.
Yeah. You're saying to your teenager, oh, well, I think, 2 stubbies is enough to take to that party.
Yeah.
And underneath you're thinking, God, I'm a hypocrite because I'd have taken a dozen cans easily. Yeah. That's a normal experience for the Generation X. We do feel like hypocrites because we did just have these wild boundaries there.
Oh, we were going to the bloody pub well below, and it was a competition.
Yep.
And then, And
just how we drank. I think the goal was to get so blind drunk that you were throwing up or passed out or something, whereas that still happens. You still get the bogan ones, but by and large, that's not how young people drink now. Yeah. They've got a much more responsible attitude to it.
Is it because part of it's got to be, obviously, when we were growing up, there was no phones, there was no internet, there was no, there was no online this and that. There was no online, you couldn't get online and bloody watch porn, and you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that. And it was just so many lists. So it was almost premeditated, or was premeditated, that you just knew what you were going to do on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, whatever. You were going to, try and go to the pub, and you were going to get someone to buy you a crate of 750s and share it amongst 3 of your mates. And it was really simple. It was so much more simple than now the choices and the opportunities and the things and the connections and the stuff that there is. I
think we had slacker parents too. Like in terms of
because they came
they didn't
from
expect to. Yeah, they were the 60s themselves. They were like the 50s. Well, especially the 60s, early 60s. Those parents, and so they had that cultural revolution and stuff. And I think they were not as strict as the parents were in the 50s on there. So I think they were the first generation of parents that were quite free. The baby boomers, Not that it worked, because Generation X were the worst generation ever. So I don't know if that freedom really worked.
We were left to our own devices and so many. Used to, you were playing out in the streets. You're bloody on your push bikes, going disappearing. Your parents didn't even care if they didn't see you.
I think that was a huge advantage in your childhood. I don't know if that was a huge advantage in your adolescence. Yeah. Like being 5 and being out, I was 2 and being able to wander the neighbourhood and come home by the time the streetlights were on. I loved that, and it gave me a sense of freedom and independence. It was really valuable. But I know now, like the parents that are still trying to guide their teenagers, when you're 16-year-old, when you're still saying, well, how many stubbies are you taking to this party? What's the backup plan if something goes wrong, or you end up having more, you're still involved in doing it. And they get so much better outcomes than when you just go, oh, well, you drink now, so did me no harm, and you just leave your 16-year-old out drinking. You don't know how much they're drinking, what time they're coming home. Those kids that don't have those negotiated boundaries are way worse off. So I think that freedom we had as X generation was great for our childhood, but not so wonderful for adolescence.
Yeah.
There need to be a wee bit more hands-on with adolescence, I think.
Yeah, well, that's valid. Drugs and alcohol at the bottom of the list. We sort of talked about that. Why, should we still be taking more, talking more about that than we currently are? The whole.
I don't know.
It's drugs. Is it more drugs than alcohol?
Yeah, probably is more drugs. That's part of getting old. It's not staying up with that. Like the only drug that was a consideration when I was a teenager was marijuana. Yeah. So there's lots more drugs to be able to consider now. and people, shifting to Auckland, because I come from down south, I notice how much more, and going to Australia a lot, how much more mainstream drug taking is. It still seems quite an alternative thing, when you talk, we're talking pee and stuff. But of course, there's less research on how that impacts with driving, but assumably it's not good. So I don't think we have to worry as much about the alcohol, because this generation seems to have got that. They seem to be leading the way in terms of being sensible about that. They just don't drink in the same alcoholic ways that Generation X did. But I don't know about other drugs and prescribed medications and stuff and how much that's impacting. So I don't really know.
Yeah, I just, my kids, I haven't, they don't even sort of really talk about their mates or anybody at any stage drinking and driving. I just don't hear about it. Whereas, I think about when I could, it was, someone was doing it or shouldn't have been driving bloody every single weekend, for some reason.
I've still got mates in my generation that still do that. That still just think it, and they get away with it most of the time, and it just blows my mind. I would just not do it, I remember drink driving once when I was 20-something accidentally, because I just so would not think to drink and drive. It just wouldn't be something I'd do. And then, it sounds dumb now, but then I remembered I'd left something at home up the hill, and I was at the club, and it was a very early start of the night. And I thought, I'll just race home and get that. So I just drove up the hill and drove back. It wasn't until I was driving back that I stopped and sort of counted up how many drinks I'd had before I left. And nothing happened. I wasn't caught, but I realised I would have been over the limit then.
Well over.
Because it wasn't late at night, and I'd only been out for an hour or something. But I thought, but I had like 3 shots, and then... So even that freaked me out, but I just wouldn't do it. And I think the younger generation are like that as well. They just wouldn't think to do it. It's not their norm. But there's still a lot of us 50-year-olds that think it's okay. It's only a few blocks.
Okay. Is there a myth about the brain or parenting that drives you mad? That you hear something that is just bogus that that people believe in.
The one I mainly hear is that we only know what 10% of the brain does, and the 90% of it's sitting there unknown. That was based on something I think Albert Einstein said early on. And he wasn't saying that 90% of it sits there vacant, we don't know what it's doing, we only know 10%. It was just talking about the potential of the brain. Every part of the brain, we know what it does, but there is more about the brain we don't understand than we do understand. But people's myth, there's lots of myths. The male and female brain, they're not that different. And they overlap quite a lot. If I take you and your wife, what science would tell me is that your brain will be about 75% male, but it's probably about 25% of the traits that you're more female than your wife, and vice versa. Your wife and 25% of traits would be, it's a different number for different people. What I'm saying, you don't really have a 100% male brain and 100% female brain. It doesn't really work like that. Competitiveness is seen as a male trait. So I went to a country school. Only 40 kids in the whole school. You didn't have enough for teams. There wasn't much competitiveness
so going on. So they all played together?
Yeah, all played together, and you had to be careful because the ones you were playing with were younger, so you didn't go as hard with them and stuff. Whereas, so that's not very competitive. And then I line up against a girl who played competitive tennis her whole childhood. She's going to be more competitive than I am, so she's got more of that male trait than I've got. So they call it the mosaic theory for gender. So that really you've got a mosaic. You don't have a male or a female brain. You've probably got 75% male, 25% female. And multitasking is another one that comes across, that women can multitask and men can't. The brain doesn't really like multitasking at all. But I suppose that taps into the gender stuff too. Yeah, I mean, understandable to want to simplify it. And I use those things in my talks as well, because if you're just introductory, it's good to understand the basics, but just understand it's way more complex than that. You don't really have it,
That's really just the top scrape of the surface.
Yeah. I see with my 3 kids, like I say, girls' brains grow faster. They generally do. Generally, a female shows an adult brain scan between 18 and 24, whereas a male will generally show an adult brain scan somewhere between 22 and 32. So overall, females' brains grow faster. Firstborn children's brains grow faster, yep. So the fastest growing is a female who's the firstborn. She's probably 18. And then the slowest growing would be a boy who's not the firstborn. He's going to take till 32. So if you have a girl first and then a boy, like I did, and you've got a 2-year age gap, that means literally your firstborn daughter's going to reach adulthood at 18. She's going to get all 4 brains online in 18 years. The boy you had 2 years later is going to take 32 years to do that. So he's not going to be 2 and talking like the first one was. The first one at 2 is going, "Can I have a drink, please, Daddy? I'm rather parched." And then your son at 2 is going, "Dunk, dunk." And your firstborn daughter starts school at 5, and she can already read, and she already knows the colours, and she already knows the numbers, and she can already write her name. And then your son had 2 years later,
sitting on the floor.
You're not even trying. And then your son's 6.5. He's put in reading recovery because he's still got no interest in learning to read or anything. And then it's the same when they're adolescents. The parents, when I do teen brain talks, will often say the same thing. They'll say, I don't know what's wrong with my 23-year-old son. When his older sister was 23, she already had a degree, she already travelled around Europe, she was already planning on 2.5 children. He's been raised in the same household with the same rules and the same parents. He's 23, he's just getting stoned and playing PlayStation all the time. What's gone wrong? They're from the same kids, It's like, well, he's going to take 32 years to bring online that brain number 4 that cares about consequences.
Whatever you do, don't let him bloody have children.
Yeah. But see, so gender does come into it. But then I think with my kids, my eldest daughter had a bit of that Maui temperament. She had to be a bit rebellious and do things her own way and wasn't going to be told. And then I often joke that my son was born a kaumatua, like a little old man, doing things in the right way. So in lots of ways, he acts like a firstborn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so temperament can mix it up. That's what I mean. That you can't just go male
it's not
because I've got a contradiction in myself.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's not 100% guaranteed any of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just patterns.
Yeah. You must get some pretty wild questions when you're doing your seminars and presentations.
Yeah.
Any that have really stuck?
Just recently I did a leadership program with these young men, and I volunteered. I was going to teach at the school anyway, teach the teachers, but these young guys had asked me that the head boy from the previous year and the head boy from that year had worked out, well, their curriculum was good and full. They didn't think there was enough in there teaching young people about leadership and about how to be leaders. So they formed their own little society for young guys to learn to develop leadership. And they'd come together and have speakers and stuff. So they asked me to come and speak. So I did come and speak to them. It was so much fun. But they did want to spend a large proportion of the time talking about whether aliens exist or not. No. And it's interesting because they've got such a different perspective. We live in a different time. Like aliens to our generation is a bit out there. Whereas to their generation, we now know how much larger the universe is. We now know how many planets are actually habitable. That scientifically it would make no sense if life didn't come up. So they can engage and converse in a much deeper conversation about that. There's not just X-Files. It is meaningful, intelligent. I thought that was really fascinating, and their understanding of the universe and the universe they live in is rapidly changing.
That would have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love it. I love teaching kids like that. I mean, I get lots of trauma stories.
Yeah.
I get lots of people, because my approach, I've always taught about trauma. And so I have lots of people with adopted children. A common story I get that's really rewarding for me is someone they'll come to me and say, we adopted this kid from China or Russia or something. We got her there, she's 2 years old. We put her into a behaviour management program and time out and stuff, and the kid just went feral. We couldn't, and we're at the end of our tether, my wife's crying every night, I can't go to work, I'm taking the time off work, the kid's inconsolable, we're like, oh my God, we need to send her back, sort of thing. And then you teach them how the brain operates, and that they could do that if they got her as a newborn baby, because they would treat her like a newborn baby for the first couple of years. But you can't get a 2-year-old and put her straight into behaviour management. You've got to go back and fall in love with her first. And so you get them to go back and undo what they've done and just focus on attachment. And they come in, they're so grateful because it's turned around the whole relationship. And it's just that knowledge of knowing how the brain works. They were coming with the best of intention. But if you do that to a 2-year-old, of course they're going to go feral when they don't know who you are. And, time out can be a behaviour management thing. It could be locked in a cupboard. It's depending on how you're doing it, So that's a lot of the feedback that I get.
Well, that would be the answer to, if you could get every parent to sit down and have one proper chat with their kid, what would you want that to be about? Well, it's probably actually about learning. It's before having a chat.
Yeah.
It's understanding that.
Yeah. I think it's I encourage parents to do this thing called a mate date, where you give your kid 10 minutes every week at a predictable time, because predictability is the key word for understanding brains. It really is. If you had to pick one word that most encapsulates how your brain works, it's predictability.
Yeah.
So I say do it at the same. If you do it Thursday at 4 o'clock every week, the kid can predict that. It'll happen after 3 weeks. It'll start to kick in because they can predict it. If you go Monday at 4, the next week Wednesday at 8, that's not as predictable. But I say for 10 minutes a week, have a mate date with your kid where you hand over all the power of the parent to the child. So, right, there's no consequences. You're allowed to say whatever you want. There's no consequence. This is your time where you've got a voice, because, we spend the rest of the time correcting them and telling them to be polite and not to speak to adults like that. And, and that's good. That's parenting, but it means they never get to really feel like they fully are articulating and expressing how they feel about something. We get to be the boss all the time. So you give them 10 minutes a week where they are allowed to express whatever they want. It seems risky to the parents, but it so vastly improves the quality of your relationship with your kid. And then the rest of the time, on the Tuesday, when you're trying to get him to do something, he doesn't want to argue back as much because he knows he's got Thursday at 4 o'clock to tell you what a wanker you were if he can wait till then. So it does mean that he can. Yeah. But they don't. Parents think they're going to sit them down at Thursday at 4 o'clock and list all the things they've done wrong, and they don't. Kids just really want that connection. They want to feel like you're really listening to them. And if the kid goes, oh, this kid called me a dick, so I punched him. Oh, you should have gone to the principal. You should have gone to the dean. No. It's just correcting. It's correcting. When you're not allowed to do that, you just have to go, oh, you must have been angry. The kid just feels really listened to. You're not correcting them. You're not telling them they should be someone else, that they should improve. You just feel emotionally connected. So I encourage everyone to have 10 minutes a week. Normally on the first week, they just play PlayStation and ignore you because they don't know what you're on about. What do you mean I'm going to be in charge for 10 minutes? There's no consequences. You've never shut up for 10 minutes in my whole life, And on the second week, there's still not enough prediction either. They're surprised you actually remembered it the second week. So again, they just play PlayStation again. But the trick is that because you've given them 10 minutes, you don't check your cell phone, you don't do anything else. If they only own you for 10 minutes a week and they're playing PlayStation, you sit and you avidly watch that PlayStation for 10 minutes. It's a challenge for parents because I say at this point, you're not even allowed to ask questions. Because when you ask questions, you are taking over leadership.
Straight away.
And you're not allowed to lead. For that whole 10 minutes, you've got to actually see what it's like to be a kid where you don't have any leadership. You just get to do as you're told. So you're allowed to go, and make statements, but you're not even allowed to ask questions, And so they just watch the PlayStation again for 10 minutes. By week 3, normally that's enough for the kid to start having a predictability. And they test it on week 3. Kids under 10 usually want you to lie on your back and they stick a bottle in your mouth. They just want you to suck a bottle for 10 minutes because that's the most powerless they've ever known as being an infant. And that's the most powerful as being a parent. So they switch roles. So I say it's worth it. Just suck it up and suck that bottle for 10 minutes and be the baby. Kids over 10 usually test it by swearing on the 3rd week.
Yeah, right.
They just start swearing like a trooper to see if you're going to kick in consequences. But you don't. You just write it out and go, well, it's your 10 minutes. If that's what you want to do, go for your life, Parents are usually shocked at how well their kids can swear. Like they know the kid can swear, but they didn't know they could swear that well. So yeah, and how many words and stuff. But if you can get through that in week 3, listening to all of that, and there's no consequence, you let them swear away. Honestly, by week 4, they will tell you things that they would never have told you before. Parents all think, and they want to have that relationship with the kids where they can tell me anything, but you've got to actually carve out some time and a space to create that to happen. It can't just be unspoken they can tell you anything, because it's much harder for kids to tell you stuff than you realise, because we're always busy, both parents are working, we're multitasking, we're used to being corrective, and so kids take longer to articulate how they feel about things. So if they've got 10 minutes every week where they can say what they like for 10 minutes, it so vastly improves the quality of your relationship. You'll start to get some of that grandparenting stuff that you don't normally get until you're a grandparent. You start to get some of that relationship.
Jeez. That's interesting. Wish I'd known that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It sort of grew organically because my son challenged me about it in the garage once. That he wanted to be able to just tell me stuff and not be interrupted and things. And he said, you do it with your mates. And so we come up with this, which just happened organically. It's come up, okay, when we're in the garage and there's no one else there, there's just me and you, all right, you can just speak to me like a mate. You can swear, you can, but as soon as your sister comes into the garage or, someone else comes into the garage, it's back to normal parenting stuff. You're not allowed to speak disrespectfully to me, but if we're one-on-one, then we can talk like that. And, I just realised the high-quality conversations we were having in the garage when he didn't feel inhibited by the rules and,
Oof, it's powerful. I mean, it's, I hope a lot of people listen to this and put it into context of, what we have done with, driving in the brain. Yep. And can apply some of this and have a much better understanding, especially those that maybe are about to start that journey and have to go through it with their kids and actually think about it quite differently. And I know a lot of people do and they do it right. Yeah. But there's a lot of blasé around it, which is just preparing, or it's not preparing well at all, but it's setting kids up to fail. Yeah. For all sorts of reasons. All sorts of reasons. Especially
I can see
the pressure that parents have when they're trying to teach their kids to drive. Really, if you can avoid it, you want to actually have someone else who's
that'd be my advice. If you get an auntie or an uncle or a professional to do it, it's much easier.
Yeah. Hey, mate, righto, driving is one of the most dangerous things we do each day, and AutoSense's mission is to create safer journeys for all road users. So I have a few questions that are related to this.
Okay.
Can you handle being in the driver's seat?
Yes, I can. Fire away.
If your car could talk, what would it say about your driving?
It would say that that likes how I respect the car and drive it 99% of the time. But sometimes I'm absent-minded, hence the rim marks on the rims.
Yeah. What's the worst thing that you've eaten or spilled in your car? It'd be just coffee, would it?
It's mainly milk.
Milk?
Milk, because it rots and it smells and it goes
you don't
rotten
clean
milk.
it up?
No, well, I mean, when the kids have spilled milk in the car.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I had to get the whole
Not the
insurance job and have the whole, not the Mustang, it wasn't, no, but another car and have the whole car, the cars had to be ripped out. And because that rotten milk
go off, man.
it goes, that off smell was really bad.
It's like hiding a dead fish in someone's
Yeah,
car.
yeah, it is. Yeah. That was so full on, and you just couldn't get rid of it.
Have you been pulled over?
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a lot. White privilege again. So I don't get pulled over a lot. I look like the old rich white guy, so they're pretty nice to me.
Driving a Mustang.
Yeah.
What scares you most when driving?
There's sort of two things. There's other people's unexpected behaviour and my own dumbness. Like what I said, when I've gone to look and seen nothing and pulled out, how the fuck, where did that come from? And so I know it's because I just didn't see it and that I should have seen it. It was there. But I didn't see it. I turned around and I've been visualising a blank street. And so I've seen a blank street and I haven't seen a car that's right there. That scares me.
And anyone that says that their own dumbness, they don't have their own dumbness, and that's not part of what scares them, is lying.
Yeah, exactly
every
right.
single person, including, doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how much driving.
Yep.
We've all done that.
Yep.
If you could change one rule on the road, what would it be?
I think we could probably go faster. Like, not in dangerous situations, but cars are better now and
I've
things.
always thought that you should be able to be tested, right? And tested at a high level, and if you're good enough, then you get a special privilege.
Yeah, I think we could go up to 120.
Right. Well, there's at the moment there's consultation out around driver's licensing and bits and pieces. Maybe you should just add that in there as part of the submission that you put in. Faster. Just faster.
Yeah.
Everyone should drive faster. Any top tip or tips for kids when they start driving?
The calmer you are, like your brain number 1, your survival brain, and brain number 4, where all the good stuff is, essentially work like they're on an old-fashioned set of scales. So, both scales can't be both up, both scales can't be down. So if you want that cortex, that frontal cortex, to be up and active and doing well with your driving, you need to equally have a calm brainstem. So, do routine ritual stuff before your driving lesson. Make sure you do have your breakfast, or you've got food in your belly. You've done those ritualised things, and just do a bit of repetitive breathing before you get into the car. Just slow, deep breathing, so you calm yourself right down. Because if you're up here and all excited, it is exciting learning to drive a car. You're sort of 50% of the way to an accident already, just because you're up here and excited. So compensate by that by going. Nice, slow, deep breaths. The literature talks about a method called 6-4-6. In on the count of 6, out on the count of 4. In on the count of 6, out on the count of 4. That repeated number just calms the brainstem and engages the cortex.
And parents should do that too if they're going to be sitting with their kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe more so.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they are setting the tone. So, for parents to do that, especially.
Well done. So much to take away from our conversation, as always.
Yeah, it's always good talking to you, Greg.
Well, there you have it, Nathan. Thank you, mate. It's been so bloody good having you in the driver's seat today. Really appreciate you coming along for the ride. And, of course, a big thanks, as always, to our sponsor, AutoSense. Whether you're behind the wheel of a red Mustang or the family wagon, AutoSense are doing great work getting drivers home safely, and no one can argue with that. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow and share it with someone who you know will love it too.